Hey everyone, and welcome back to today's Explainer. Today we are getting incredibly practical. We're unpacking Chapter 7, which gives us these 5 complete, ready-to-teach lesson plans. It's essentially a builder's blueprint for taking a Prarambhik keyboard student from their absolute very first lesson all the way to a full, accompanied performance. So if you're teaching, or honestly, even if you're just learning, this breakdown is going to give you a super cohesive start-to-finish game plan.
Now tell me if this sounds a bit crazy. How do you take a student from absolute zero to their first full performance in just 5 lessons? It sounds almost impossible, right? Well, I promise you, it is entirely possible, and it all relies on the somewhat counterintuitive magic of structured pacing. See, it's not at all about rushing. It's about making sure that every single block you place is rock solid before you even think about adding the next one.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the 5-lesson arc blueprint, then look at foundation, posture, and pitch, followed by building melody and rhythm. After that, we'll cover identity, introducing Rag Bhupali, look at the capstone composition, and finally, wrap up with adapting to every student. It's an amazing, carefully engineered chain where everything connects.
Alright, Section 1, the 5-lesson arc blueprint. Let's dive right into this and look at the core philosophy driving this specific sequence of lessons.
Listen, there is a massive difference between just playing random notes to keep a student busy and actually building a cohesive dependency chain. In this blueprint, every single lesson relies entirely on the one that came before it. For example, Lesson 3's rhythm work just assumes that Lesson 2's finger security is already solid, and Lesson 5 assumes all 4 previous lessons are genuinely in place. If you skip a single step in this chain, you're quietly weakening everything built on top of it. You know, it's like building a house. You simply cannot put a roof on a house if it's missing walls.
Moving on to Section 2, Foundation, Posture, and Pitch. Let's look at Lesson 1, where we lay down that very first brick.
Okay, so Lesson 1, meeting the keyboard. The true objective here might actually surprise you. It is absolutely not to play a song. The goal is to master just one single note, middle C. That's it. We want the student sitting with perfect posture, independent of having to visually search the keys and striking that single key with perfectly curved fingers. Your success here isn't measured by how much ground you covered, but by how calmly and correctly they found that one note. The hands-on activities to get them there are just brilliant. Before you even turn the keyboard on, have the student practice holding a ball hand shape right on a tabletop. Next, you play a little game called Find Me a C, where they hunt for every group of 2 black keys. After that, they play middle C 5 times, constantly checking that hand shape. And here's a pro tip for the parents. Have the child teach the parent how to find middle C at home that night. Reversing those roles builds incredible confidence, and honestly, it acts as a totally painless check to see if the lesson genuinely landed. And that brings us to a super crucial point. It is such a common mistake for teachers to want to rush forward. You know, we all want to feel like we accomplished a lot in Lesson 1. But remember this, a student who leaves that lesson able to find and play only middle C, but doing it with excellent posture and hand shape, is infinitely better prepared than a student who touched 5 notes with totally sloppy technique.
All right, Section 3, Building Melody and Rhythm. Now that our foundation is set, let's transition into Lessons 2 and 3, where we start stacking onto that pristine first brick.
When you introduce the notes sa, re, ga, ma, pa, you've got to pay attention to the precise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingering, starting with the thumb on sa. The whole goal here is to build true physical independence for every single finger. But we're not just doing mechanical drills here, right? Using the Kodali method, the student has to sing the swaras first, before even touching the keys. Then, they have to say the swara names out loud while playing them. This is absolutely vital. It connects the sound, the name, and the physical finger sensation all at the exact same time. Also, a quick tip for the teachers out there, resist the urge to show off. Avoid dropping the full Sanskrit names like Shadaj or Rishab until the basic sa, re, ga, ma, pa feels 100% secure. You really don't want to overload their attention. Jumping right into Lesson 3, we meet Tal, specifically Keherwa, which is an 8-matra cycle. Now, before we ever combine this with the keyboard, the student has to embody the rhythm physically. So, beats 1 through 4 are tali, meaning they're clapped firmly, with the first beat, the sam, getting the main emphasis. Then beats 5 through 8 are hali, which you represent with an open hand wave. The student physically learns this shift from clapping to waving long before they try to play any notes to it.
Now you are definitely going to run into this pitfall. When a student loses the beat, Their natural instinct is to just stop entirely and restart from beat 1. We have to teach recovery instead. If they lose the count, teach them to rejoin the cycle smoothly at the nearest SAM rather than stopping. Because think about it, real performances do not offer clean restarts, so recovering gracefully is a really vital skill that requires deliberate practice.
Next up, Section 4, Identity, introducing Rag Bhopali. We're shifting focus to Lesson 4 here, moving from physical mechanics to real musical theory and identity.
This is a big moment. The student is meeting their very first raga, Rag Bhopali. We teach them the ascending pattern, the aro, and the descending pattern, the avro. But the deeper conceptual shift here is getting the student to understand that a raga's identity is defined just as much by the notes it leaves out as the ones it plays. In Bhopali, we completely omit ma and ni. So if a student accidentally hits one of those notes out of habit, it's not just a wrong key, it's actually this perfect teaching moment about what makes a raga unique.
We also bring in this concept of the Picard. Think of the Picard as a raga's signature phrase, its fingerprint. For Bhopali, it's ga, re, sa, da, sa. If you play just this short phrase, anyone who knows the raga is going to recognize it instantly. A fantastic little trick here is to constantly ask your student, hey, which raga is this? During casual, low-stakes moments in the lesson. Building up that repetition ensures automatic retention, so they won't freeze up when it comes time for a formal assessment.
All right, Section 5, the capstone composition. Let's head into Lesson 5 and see how this all builds into the final roof of our blueprint.
Lesson 5 is all about consolidation. This is the moment where posture, five-finger technique, the Keharwa rhythm, and the notes of Rag Bhopali all come together into a single cohesive performance. For the very first time, these aren't just isolated little drills, they are functioning together as one integrated piece of music.
The assessment here is essentially a mini mock examination. The student performs the short composition with a clapped accompaniment or a tabla track, and then answers a few basic Viva-style questions about the raga and the tal. But, and this is key, you have to frame this capstone as a celebratory milestone, not some stressful exam. Keep the tone warm. Actually, parents are highly encouraged to host a tiny 2-minute living room recital that week. Seriously, just having the child perform for a parent and a sibling marks this as a real, genuine achievement.
And finally, Section 6, Adapting to Every Student. To wrap up this breakdown, we need to talk about how this exact same blueprint can flex to fit different types of learners.
Because look, we all know every student is totally unique, but the core sequence and standards must never be compromised. For a younger beginner like 5 to 7 years old, you might need to spread these 5 lessons out across 6 to 8 actual sessions. If you have an older beginner, maybe 11 to 14, you could easily combine lessons 1 and 2. And for a student with prior informal keyboard exposure, you know, the ones who've been picking out tunes at home, you actually need to spend extra time on lesson 1 to diagnose and correct bad habits, rather than assuming you're starting with a blank slate. The pacing changes, sure, but that vital dependency chain remains totally intact.
And I absolutely love this part, how we empower the parents throughout the whole process. We provide this one-page parent reference cheat sheet. It gives parents exactly one specific thing to focus on at home for each lesson. For lesson 1, they literally just check if the kid is sitting correctly and can find middle C 10 times. For lesson 3, it's just playing a family game of clapping the Keharwa cycle. This keeps practice incredibly focused between lessons and completely removes the mystery for parents who might not have any musical background themselves.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, from that very first touch of middle C all the way to a full-on living room recital. I want to leave you with a somewhat provocative reflection question straight from the text. Which single common mistake across these 5 lessons do you expect to see most often in your own teaching context? And what are you going to watch for specifically? Take a moment to think about that. Turn these insights into action. Keep building that cohesive chain, and we will see you in the next explainer.